Good morning, it's Christy, and we are continuing on in Matthew. Today we're looking at a story about Jesus healing a paralytic. And so let me give you the backstory. So Jesus, he is in this town. He is preaching in a home. He's teaching the people, and there's a huge crowd that has gathered, okay? Because everywhere Jesus went, people wanted to know what he was about. They wanted to follow him. They wanted to see what he was going to do next. It was like he had this magnetism that drew people to himself. And so he's in this home, he's teaching people, and there is a huge crowd. There's no way anybody can get any closer to Jesus. Well, some friends of a paralytic man, a man who couldn't walk, they came up with this plan. They would go up to the top of the house where he was teaching, and they would dig through the thatched roof, and they would lower their friend down in front of Jesus so that Jesus could heal. And this is what he says. So once this has happened, they've lowered their friend down. Jesus says to the man, this is chapter 9, and starting in verse 2, he says, when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, take heart, son, your sins are forgiven. And then if you drop on down, you look at verse 6, he says, get up and take your mat and go home. Well, there were Pharisees. The Pharisees were the religious teachers. They were there, and they were just waiting to find something that Jesus was doing wrong. And so they were thinking this whole time evil thoughts. And this is what Jesus says in verse 4. He says, knowing their thoughts, Jesus said, why do you entertain evil thoughts in your hearts? Which is easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or to say, get up and walk? But so that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. That's when he tells the paralytic, go ahead, get up, take your mat, and go home. So what do we learn from this passage? Well, first of all, we go back to the friends. They were good friends because they were going to do whatever it took to get their friend who needed a saving response from Jesus. They were going to do whatever it took to get that friend in front of Jesus. All right, so we can apply that to our own lives. Are we that friend? Are we so concerned about the spiritual needs of our friends that we will do whatever it takes in order to get them to Jesus, to point them to Jesus? Second of all, we see that the paralytic, he had faith as well. He could have said, no, don't bother Jesus. I don't even believe in that stuff. But no, he went along with it because he was willing. He was willing to try. He was willing to put himself out there and be vulnerable. And Jesus saw that willingness, and he healed the man. But the third thing that we see is Jesus forgave the man of his sins first. He didn't deal with the paralysis first. He dealt with the sins because, our bodies are temporary, and what we are experiencing in our bodies today is just a temporary thing. It's not going to last forever. There's an eternity, though, and that is what Jesus is concerned about, where your heart is, where your soul is, where you are going to spend eternity. And so he addressed the man's sins first, and he forgave him. He saw the man's faith, and he forgave the man of his sins. Then he dealt with the paralysis. All right. And then finally, the religious leaders, they were feeling all of these evil things in their hearts. They were, thinking that Jesus was blaspheming. They were totally missing the point. Here was God in the flesh. Only God, and according to the word and the word that they knew, the religious leaders, they knew and taught, only God could forgive sins. And here Jesus is forgiving sins and healing. It just proves his deity. All right, have a great day.